Well, I'm always a little bit happy and a little bit sad when I leave the bee yard, but here we are back in my kitchen. And because we're talking about the fact that the bees and the hive is a healing spot, it's a healing spot for the bees, but also they provide unbelievable natural healing for us. The very act of beekeeping is healing. You have to concentrate on what you're doing and be nice and quiet. And you smell the smells coming from the hive, you watch their activities. And these creatures are truly amazing in what they make. And of course, one of the first things we always think about with honeybees is honey. And honey is so different depending on what the bees have been feasting on. Where have they been getting their nectar? So, for instance, these are just two honeys that came. These are actually 12-year-old honeys that I've had in my barn, and they're labeled from where they came from, somebody's back garden. But they look very different, and that's because this one is a city honey, which often is a dark honey and very complex in its flavors. And this one is more of a country honey. So they look different and they taste different. The bees start off by making honeycomb. So here is a piece of natural honeycomb. And the honeycomb they make with wax. When they eat nectar, they can make wax. And they make all these cells together in what we call comb. And then sometimes they fill it with honey. Very yummy. Oh yeah, that's very yummy honey. So sometimes they fill it with the nectar from the plant and then they make that into honey. And sometimes they put other things in it, like pollen. But we'll start with honey. And of course, I'm having difficulty talking now because I have wax on my teeth. 1 minute, please. And honey, as long as you keep it covered, will stay basically forever. So sometimes honey might crystallize in a jar. So you'll see this honey is starting to crystallize. That doesn't mean it's going bad. It just means that the sugars in there are turning to crystals. And this particular honey doesn't have the same type of sugar in there, so it's not going to crystallize. But if you have honey that is crystallized and you don't want to eat it crystallized, you can just put it in a hot water bath. But you know, honey is just so good for you. I could sit here and eat honey all day long. This is honey from the Yukon. It's fireweed honey, and it's quite nice and runny, very white. This has a much, sorry, it's hard not to react to it. This is fireweed honey, and this is from the Yukon. Absolutely delicious and very, very light and simple in its flavor. I have honey in my tea in the morning. I have honey in my coffee. If I'm getting a cold, I have honey in my whiskey. If I feel that I'm not sleeping properly, I have a teaspoon of honey at night. If I have a wound, I put fresh honey on a wound and it can help heal the wound. I eat honey on bread. I eat honey on toast. I just love honey. And everything in my house is sticky. All my clothes are sticky. My bathtub is sticky. Everything is sticky. And I don't care. I love honey. So the bees then, they are out collecting nectar from the plants, and from the nectar, they make the honey. Now, they also collect pollen from the plants. And when they collect that's a savory. So we've gone from sweet, the pollen is a sort of a savory. And this jar's got different colors, and that shows that these are just two different sources where the bees got their pollen. So when the bees go to the flowers, they gather up the pollen from the plants and they move from plant to plant. And by doing that, that's how pollination occurs. They're gathering the pollen, and as they move from plant to plant, that pollination occurs. They fertilize the plants. And then they bring it back and they stuff the pollen into the cells. And when they do that, oh, whoa, that's very complex, delicious, but a bit bitter, that one. When they put the pollen in the cell, they then put a tiny bit of honey or nectar on that, and the pollen, which is covered in a hard protein coat, the nectar ferments the pollen, and all of the vitamins, all of the smells are released in the hive. This is why hive smells so delicious. And now the bees can eat the pollen. And when the bees eat the pollen, which is straight protein, they then can make what we call jelly, royal jelly and worker jelly. And this is what they feed the babies. Because although we think of all the products of the hive, that's why we're sort of interested in the honeybees and the work they can do for us. What the bees are really thinking about is growing their colony, making babies, and then growing so large in their colony that they can divide. So they have to feed the baby something, the larvae. A bee starts off as an egg for a few days, then a larva for a few days, and then it cocoons itself like a butterfly. But during the larval stage, when there's an open cell, they need to eat constantly. So the nurse bees can make jelly because they've eaten the bee bread that's in the hive. And this is extremely good for you. It is high in protein. And it's a very strong taste that I don't particularly enjoy, but many people do. And a lot of people put this straight on their skin as a beauty treatment. It is put into creams and it is very expensive. So this has been gathered over quite a bit of time. I usually gather it in the field and I bring it and I put it back in my freezer and I keep it. And it's very precious. So again, for us, we can use it for our skin. We can use it in pill form as a protein, or even just take it just as it is in a spoon. So already we found out that the honey not only is delicious and sweet, but also we can use it on our wounds, and it's very good for our health, and as a sleep aid, helps us sleep in the evening, and very good in whiskey at night. And then the pollen can also be used as a multivitamin for us. And what I do with my pollen is I just put a bit of hot water with it and honey, and I let that ferment, and I make it like a consistency similar to peanut butter. And then I can just eat a spoonful of that or have that in warm water. So honey is used as a sweetener, but it is also used in alcohol. And again, I enjoy my alcohol, I enjoy my tea, I enjoy my coffee. I like everything. I enjoy smoking a cigar with my bees. This is called Drunken Hive, and it is a type of liquor. And It's made on Vancouver Island, and this fellow only uses, oh, the smells are really, really delicious in the hive, and also smelling all the products. So this is crafted from caramelized honey, and this is one drink you can be having made with honey. There's something called mead, which goes back centuries. People used to drink mead, and mead is also called honey wine. And there are many, many different kinds of mead right now, and many in different areas. They taste different, and the different people who are making them make different types. This one's just called Sweet and Wild. Honey wine and haskap berries. Quite yummy. This one, Krupnik, is one of my favorites. And this one reminds me of being a kid and smelling Old Spice. Yeah, it's delicious, and it's quite a festive drink and lovely on ice. We often, when we're doing work in the residences, we often have a little shot of Krupnik to just congratulate ourselves on the work we've done. But again, it's a way to be socializing with each other. It's called a spiced honey liqueur, this one. Again, this one's on Vancouver Island, where he only uses honey. Oh yes, and here's yet another bottle of Krupnik, because you could never have too many bottles of Krupnik. And gin also. This is also made on the island, and this is again made with honey. And it's just a delicious. Comes from the Waterfront Hotel downtown, and it's a wild gin, delicious. So when you're out with the bees, this is one of the reasons I like to have the bees in my garden, because in the morning I can go and have a cup of coffee and watch what's happening. And I mean, the pollen's coming in on their legs, different colors. They're going to different plants, let you know what's in bloom. Kind of like when you're a fisherman and you have to pay attention to what the fish are eating. That's what you put on your line to attract them. We get to watch the bees and figure out what's in bloom. And then in the summertime, when I have my gin and tonic, I like to sit out again and relax with the bees. So I like to relax with my bees and listen to that lovely hum of them just flying, which creates that hum. I love to connect with nature through the bees by watching what they're bringing into the colony. And then when I'm doing my hive inspections and I pull out the frames, which are kind of like this, I can look inside the cells, and we'll be able to see this when we're actually doing an inspection together. You'll be able to see different colors of pollen in the cells. It's like a rainbow inside the cell, inside the hive, and that lets you know your bees are having a very good diet. And of course, the other thing you can do with honey, it can be used. We've started to have chef make different immune boosting drinks for us. And again, we're not always drinking alcohol when we're doing our work. The other day it was a warm day, and we decided to have this is an apple and a kale with honey made in it, as well as an immune booster, and a bit of ginger. And this one is carrot, very nice color. Oh, quite yummy. Oh. Oh, yes. So perhaps chef is going to get on board with you and make some immune drinks for you. We put these on ice. Some people like to have them cold, so they can just sit kind of like oysters in crushed ice. And if you don't want to have them cold, well, you just don't get them at the beginning. You wait till things warm up, and you can have them a little room temperature. So again, this is just a sample of the kind of things that the bees create for us that are healing for us. When I start to do my beekeeping, I always put my head in and I take a really big breath, and I just draw in the air of the colony. And again, that is very good for your health as well. In Europe, they have special houses where people go and sit with the bees, and they put masks on, kind of like an oxygen mask, and they just breathe the air of the bees. Some places in Europe have huts or sleeping huts, and you lie down and sleep over the bees. Again, not having bees on you, but just breathing in the air of the hive, and it's very, very healing. So we've talked about just these two things. We've talked about pollen and honey. And now we're going to move on to some more things that you can use for your own personal health. I could sit here eating more honey all day, but we are going to move along. So the bees are out in the world, and they are collecting the pollen and they are collecting nectar, and they collect water. They drink water. They also bring water back to the hive to cool the hive when they're warm. And they also go to the trees. And you know when the trees is sticky, the sticky buds, they have that resin on them. The bees go to that and they collect that resin from the trees. It smells absolutely delicious, and they bring it back in their bee baskets, and these little tiny droplets of the resin, and when they put that into the hive, they add a little saliva to it and sometimes a little wax to it, and it becomes what we call propolis. And it's hard when it's been sitting in your freezer, but when it's in the hive, it is sticky. They use it to glue things together in their construction. If they need to make their comb stronger, they add a little bit of the propolis. And it's also antimicrobial. So it is good for their health. It is also waterproof, so they often line their cavities with it to make it waterproof and a very good environment. Sometimes they even make it on their entrance, and they have to walk over like a footbath. They walk over the propolis. So we take the propolis and we put it into alcohol, or we put it into well, I'm going to be a bit vague about this because I've never made this. It's my niece who makes everything for me, because really I'm just interested in the bees. But I do use propolis. So with the propolis and either alcohol or glycerin, tinctures are made. And these tinctures are wonderful because if you have a sore throat, the inkling of a sore throat, you can take the tincture or the spray and you can apply it. So if I have a sore throat, I would just simply take the spray, a few sprays, yum, oh, yummy. Again, everything tastes yummy. And this would then keep my sore throat from developing. Or if I got it in this kind of container, I keep this in my medicine cabinet and I just take a few drops. Sometimes I just drink it. But I never get a sore throat anymore. So this is a natural medicine from the bees that can help us keep sore throats infections at bay. And also, propolis and wax and a bit of oil can be put together to make either bee balms or salves. So this one here is made in a stick. We made this one in a stick form, and honestly, it's so delicious. This one is wax and arnica oil and vanilla and a bit of lavender. And then if you've got any flaky, gross bits, my feet are terrible. I put this on my feet in the morning, but it's very easy. We just roll this on our skin and all the wrinkly skin, and maybe we may not look 20 years younger, but we definitely feel 20 years younger. So I just put this on every morning. This is where I sit every morning, and I do have all my salves and balms behind me, and depending on my mood and what I feel like smelling on the day, I just change it up. Here's one that is a Healing Hands herbal salve. Again, this is in a tin. Looks like that. And you just, put your hand in there and you can put that on. And I actually put this on all parts of my body, including my face. They all smell different. This one is a peppermint refresher. I put that on my feet because it gives me some energy. I'm on my feet all day. So again, these are just natural things. They're not antibiotic creams. There's no prescription necessary. They're natural, and I find them to be highly effective in making me feel better because I'm looking after myself. I give these away to people as gifts, and then I feel that I'm helping look after them, and there's a kind of a community, nest building community around the bees, around their products again. And people really, really love getting these. And somehow people love receiving either honey that they know that has come from the bees in my care or in our care. When you know a beekeeper, once you know a beekeeper and then you know their bees, you get to know their bees, and you feel wonderful having their honey, especially if you know they've been ethical in their beekeeping. They've tried to keep their bees as healthy as they can. I think of myself when I'm beekeeping that I'm working in partnership with my bees. I am working as hard as they are, and I'm doing my best to keep them healthy. And I think in our communities, we try to keep one another healthy in the community. And it starts with looking after yourself. My mother used to tell me, dear, if you don't look after yourself, you can't look after anybody else. So I encourage you to maybe try some of these things. And I think you'll find also that when you have these salves on you, the smell is a very calming smell. And it's this aroma, this stays with you all day long, but it's not overpowering. It's not like a perfume. So these are some of the healing aspects of the hive. These are some examples of what I have in my medicine cabinet. And I think in the olden times, when so many people had bees in their backyard, I believe this was one of the ways, one of the reasons people had bees in their backyards in the olden times is not only for the sweetening properties of honey, but also for the fact that there were so many things within that hive that could heal and keep the people, the family, healthy. Thank you, bees.